How's it going, everyone? My name is Ben Marcus, and welcome back to the final episode of Summer School with OM System. Today, we're going to be focusing on mastering the art of travel photography. I am super excited for this one. We're going to be joined today by Chris Poplawski, one of our OM System ambassadors in North America. He's been shooting for well over a decade at this point, traveling literally the entire globe, working on giant commercial projects, as well as showing a massive amount of creativity through all of his work. And I'm so excited to have him join us. We're going to go through his most iconic images in recent memory, give you guys some insights into his approach, how he creates such fantastic photos. And as always, whenever you have questions, leave them in the comments. We're going to be discussing them as we go through. Also, make sure, if you're not following him already, I've dropped his socials into the description of this. You can check him out on Instagram. He's going to give you wanderlust like nobody else. So without further ado, Chris, welcome.
How's it going, Ben? Nice to see you.
Great to have you, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Did I do a good enough intro? Did I leave any accolades on the floor? I know we could get into all the awards that you've had over the years, but anything else you want to have the people know?
No, I mean, accolades aren't all that important to me. It's just being out and doing things and having fun. And honestly, just keeping a camera in my hand is what I'm most proud of, because when you start, you're just like, how long can I keep this going? And now we are here 12 years later, maybe a little bit more. And just excited to keep doing it. So,
oh, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. I just want to give a couple shout outs to people in the comments. We've got folks from Norway. Wow. Hello. Thank you. Florida, Michigan, Asheville, Southern Indiana, Santa Cruz, Minneapolis, Cripple Creek, Toronto. Got our Canadian homies in the audience. Ottawa. Very cool. Oh, Loveland. If you're going to be around in Loveland, Colorado next month, we're going to be at the Overland Expo, so you should definitely join us. And hello from Orlando, Florida as well. Very cool. All right, so let's hop into this. So right off the bat, this first image, your travel photos, it's almost a disservice to call them travel photos, but you strike such a strong balance of landscape storytelling, unique perspectives, but then your compositions are just so striking. So, this is a little bit of an older Photoshop with the OM1. Where are we for this image?
This is in the Faroe Islands. If you don't know it, it's a small, tiny chain of islands. You can now catch international flights from Iceland, or Copenhagen is the most common routes. But when my first visit there, it was by boat, so it took like 20 hours across the ocean. This luckily was not at that first trip. It was, I think this was a couple years ago now, too, probably. But out of all the times I've been there, this exact location was the first and only time I'd ever been to this exact spot. So it holds a special place for me for various reasons. But
wow. So, yeah, I mean, you're in a unique location like this with a lot of different striking landscapes. What drew you to this being the shot?
So that's the tough question, because you can't even see it, but right to the left and behind me, there's actually this crazy waterfall. That was the whole reason we went there. And it's absolutely jaw-dropping. It's so cool to see, because to get here, it's an incredibly long hike. You're pretty much hiking through marshy areas. You need a farmer's permission, so it's really hard to just get here in general, which is like most places when you're hiking far. But this is just off the beaten track. Most people that go to the Faroes, they hear about some of the common hot spots, or you only have so many days. This is not on people's radars. So I already knew getting here in and of itself was going to be quite special. And we started totally focused on this waterfall, as I mentioned. And then all of a sudden you're just like, hey, what if we keep walking a little bit further, like past where you expect the destination to be?
Yep.
So another 5 to 10 minutes, you just reach the end of the cliffs. And Megan, my wife, who's obviously the subject down below, it was just totally her. Like there was no curation to this. It was just her excited to go run down and see. She loves the surf, so you don't see a lot of like surf swell in the Faroes. So just seeing like waves pouring in after one after another with these crazy cliffs in the background. It's getting a little bit darker, so that mood's starting to set in. And honestly, it was just like I like snapping photos of Megan. So I picked up the camera, took a photo of her, and then sure enough, as I'm like getting back into the post editing side of things, I'm like, this is a photo that I feel like like the Pharaohs is it all feels like the end of the world. But if I had to sum it up in like one photo, this is how I would describe it. It just feels like you reach the end of like this point. You can't go further. It's like this is what you're working with. And again, it was just the sun coming down with this like moody haze. It was just really, really beautiful.
Yeah, I like that you decided to leave just a little bit of that stark, strong sunlight that's just starting to creep through that overcast on the right. Um, there are a lot of things that are kind of serendipitous in this photo. I think that make it work, that if they were absent, it wouldn't quite suck you in just as much as it does, at least for me. You mentioned those waves. One of the things that I think is really important for people to look at when they're looking at travel or landscape, when they're trying to tell the story and give the feel of a location, if you didn't have those waves, I don't think you'd have quite as much sense of distance and scale, because you go right from her, right at the drop off there, and then it's right into those far away cliffs. So you've got something in the middle to help give you a better frame of reference for the grandeur of this, which is cool.
Yeah, in Faro specifically, it's just known for rugged landscapes. So it's
Mhm.
very rare to see just like flat ocean. And obviously you can find little pockets of things with massive cliffs where it does feel a little bit calmer. And oftentimes you see seabirds flying around, which is always like a great choice of just adding a little extra subject. And we did have seabirds in this moment, but obviously I just love that simplicity of it,
Right.
because for me it wasn't supposed to be something that like resonated deeply in the portfolio. It was just like, I want this moment of my wife, which is obviously so special for me and for her to just look back on it. Because you reach that destination, like that waterfall, and you're just expecting to be blown away, and you are, like, you really are. It like stops
Sure.
you and it makes you feel it. But then when you get to this point you're not expecting, to that thing that you never did see a photograph of, because there's a few photographs of the waterfall online, so you kind of have an idea in your head. This is like Pharaoh to a T. This is like the moments you don't expect to a T.
Right.
Going back to the sunset, like I have a couple versions I was debating on where you crop it out, but I love color, like pops of color in a place that doesn't tend to show a lot of color. It's a very mood driven place. So like when I can add it to kind of balance mood and color, I just feel like it makes more sense to the landscape, to the greens and the yellows that you see in the grass that have just been untouched for who knows how long.
Right.
It just makes it more special to me. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I can definitely hear that there's a lot of like joy and emotional attachment to this, which is kind of like art well done, photo well done. I do have one question I want to address, and I think it's a great way to kick off this overall discussion. So, does your approach change between travel photos and vacation travel photos?
That's a funny one for me because when we vacation, Megan loves to slow down, so I'm not
Yeah.
exactly able to reach some of these like very isolated places. So my approach kind of goes back into just like, how do you capture memories, and whatever that may be, whatever we find ourselves doing in a day. I'm just kind of always active with it. So I would say travel and vacation, no matter what, if I have a camera in my hand, I'm just openly keeping my mind to the point of like details and big landscapes or big moments, whatever I'm getting myself into. So I feel like now, because I travel so much, it's not that my like approach changes, because I just love having a camera in my hand. But I think what like does shift is just what I'm able to reach. So I'm not really reaching places like this. So I'm just practicing shooting other things. It could be portraits of Megan. It could be photos of our dog if our dog's traveling with us on vacation. If we're in a campsite, I try to just like every morning walk around for an hour or two and see how far I can get from the campsite and find unique perspectives,
Right.
which is very similar to when you're travel. shooting is you got to cover ground, in my opinion. You got to be willing to go see a lot more and kind of shift your attention and your perspective to get new angles. So just stay moving. That's really, it doesn't change, but it is a common approach, I think, for both.
Very cool. So I'm going to give a takeaway, and then I think we've got a couple other questions. But for those of you watching, I would say the key takeaway for this, and this is going to be a common theme throughout, and it's not necessarily photographic, but stay open to your plans changing, especially when you're working in a place that you're not familiar with, and stay present, right? The idea of this is to create memories. If your entire small window of time that you can actually like really go shoot is focused on, I'm going to photograph that waterfall, damn the torpedoes and everything else, you could miss something else that winds up being the surprise showstopper for the trip. So, stay open, stay flexible, and communicate with the people that you're with. So it's a good time for everybody, right? We're not all photographers on the trip. So we do have a super easy question for you. I think I know the answer. Do you ever use your phone when you travel? Sure, of course. But the best camera is the one that you have with you, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you just have to. Sometimes, especially for social media nowadays, it's, sometimes you're just looking for a quick moment, not a fleshed out perfectionate moment. Not to say I'm always getting perfect moments with my OM system, but I
That's
just
all you
like
send me, but
yeah. I mean, just like, sometimes I'm like, I pick it up too quick trying to grab a bird and my shutter speed was from the last location, right? So it's like, darn it, I missed that quick moment, but you
right.
reset, you regather, and you shoot. But I definitely think, taking selfies with Megan is not always about having a camera. It's just about having that little, pocket of memory in you. Definitely mix it in for sure.
I realize based on the interactions that we're getting, we've got some great questions coming in, and please keep them coming. There is no bad question here. I'm probably going to be made a liar very quickly to say like one last question before we move on, but I think it's another good tone setter. You are touching your photos up with Lightroom, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. I mean, editing is a part of the creative process, but composing it and shooting it right is definitely going to give you a much better result and not so much time getting stuck editing. Do you recommend Lightroom Mobile or Photoshop, or do you do small stuff on mobile and then wait for the whole project when you go back to your laptop? Like how do you kind of make those choices of when and how you're going to retouch?
Yeah, it might actually surprise most people because I spend so much time traveling, but I don't really mess with Lightroom Mobile too much. I have, and I know I can achieve the same outcome, but as I've explained to Ben a few times, I just keep my Lightroom process super simple.
Yep.
I have a preset that I designed 6-7 years ago at this point, and it's just so consistent. It literally has not defaulted to make me feel like, as technology changes and weather changes, no matter if I'm in moody or the brightest of days, the preset works for me. And just with the workflow I have when I get everything on a computer and I sit down sometimes for an entire day and I'll go through an entire trip. And I mean, I'm not kidding. I can get through like 3,000 to 4,000 images in one single day, which most people are like, how the heck do you do that? But the trick is I don't go crazy with editing. I just keep it fairly simple for most images. And then obviously my like pride and joy moments, I will go back and I'll kind of retouch up. I mess with gradients for sure in the final copies of things. But when you're talking like wholesale, like looking across the board, I try to get all of my selects to a point I'm happy with and then retouch up all through Lightroom on my laptop.
Okay. So now I'm going to say actually last question. So somebody asked if this was focus stack shot at f5. I'm going to take a wild guess and say no. This is one image, right?
One image. Most of my images are one image.
Exactly. So let's talk about that a little bit. So f5 is a shallow f-stop. F-stop, for those of you that aren't aware, that is determined by the lens. That's how much light is being let in, but it also can determine what's in focus through the depth of a photo. When you've got a subject in an image like this, especially in landscape, where everything is far away from you, it's all going to be in relative focus. You don't have to stack. Focus stacking becomes more of a tool to use if you've got a really close subject and far away subjects, or you're working in macro, or you're working on super, super tiny scale. That's going to be where that's beneficial. Thankfully, OM System has that as a built-in feature, and it'll do it automatically in the computational modes on pretty much all of our cameras. It just, is going to be compatible with certain lenses depending on your situation for macro. But all right, so we're going to move on then. But yeah, keep those questions coming, guys. So you'll notice throughout this presentation, we're going to go back and forth between very different images to keep that discussion fresh. So am I looking at a mountain lion? Am I looking at a puma? Am I looking at something different? What are we seeing here?
This is a puma in Torres del Paine National Park in Patagonia on the Chile side. It was a very unexpected encounter, although we were seeking it. But yeah, it is one of my favorite images from the trip, and there's some pretty remarkable places there. So
I'm going to call out some things that Chris has done really well here. So when travel and vacations also mean wildlife, this is a really good one to keep in mind when possible. Get on your subject's eye level. It gives you a much more dramatic image, and you can get that catch light back in the eye that is so interesting. And then you've got the light directionality just creating such an amazing soft glow, and you've managed not to blow out that chest fur, which is really impressive as well. Complementary colors, I think, are something that you do really well, but also I notice your white balance, that shift between your colds and your warms. You've managed to give a lot of warmth without making our puma feel terribly cold and blue, which you would push too far by accident. You said this is an unexpected shot. I mean, how far away were you? Like, give me a back end of what was going on here.
Yeah, I mean, this shot from where I was probably 50 feet. So it wasn't like incredibly far, which was actually quite lucky because that doesn't happen very often. And a lot of people, when we were there, we had various jobs to also capture. But we had an option, basically spend thousands of dollars on a puma tour, which takes like a half day to a day. Or I just took it upon myself that like we kind of are more self-explorers a lot of the time. And I knew from just prep talk with people who've been, you're probably not going to see a puma. But I just get very determined on these things, and I make Megan wake up at 4 a.m. to get to a place where the moment that sun's coming over, the edge, So the day before I got to where we were, I'm not gonna say the exact location because I protect
ethical
these things.
Wildlife photography, absolutely.
Yeah. I just kind of went and I checked the sun when it would be up above this certain moment, so I kind of knew when the light would be hitting the valley before I even got there, if we got a sunrise. So we got there like 20-30 minutes before. And Megan's scanning passenger side, I'm scanning driver side and road ahead. And it's very hard. I mean, you can't tell with this photo because it's close, but it's very complementary colors. So to see a puma, it happens fast. It's a very glance thing, and you're covering ground. You see all these other cars out looking, and some of them are trackers. So you're like, maybe I'm in the right area. But I just happened to see this little tiny motion coming down from the top of a hill. And I was like, Megan, I think I see a puma. And we stopped. We basically just hung tight for like 10 seconds. And before you know it, this thing was walking right at us. And there was like 5 trackers, 200 yards on each direction, that had no idea it was there. And within 3 minutes, it was gone. It went down the hill into this valley where we were, and then up. And, so this is a very quick interaction, which obviously, if you want to spend money, you're probably going to get a little bit more time with Puma and the professional people in the area. But I find, more fulfillment doing it myself and seeing it this low to the ground. I don't know how, someone who's there to watch 10 people on a tour would allow you to work a moment with photography, but as Ben said, getting eye level, getting that foliage to be more relevant, and also just getting lucky too, where it's going to come in and out of like foliage like that. It's thick at times, so you sometimes don't have that clear face shot. So you kind of just have to be, I guess, for lack of better terms and old school terminology, just spraying photos is the whole time it's walking,
Good old
right?
spray
Praying
and
and
pray.
spraying.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
I mean, it
uh,
definitely helps when you've got, an autofocus system that can track animal eyes. I mean, that definitely helps with the spray and
absolutely.
pray. For both a new person coming in that, their keeper rate with those fast action shots isn't going to be as great. And for a pro, it gives you more consistency, more breathing room to focus on the composition and stay situationally aware. I'm just going to bang out a couple questions to address in the comments. So the lens that was being used, so that was the 150 to 400 Pro lens. Some people call that our big white. Shockingly light for what it is. I can't tell you how many times people pick it up, and then they usually say something along the lines of, "I had no idea." Right?
Yep.
You're also, if you're curious about Chris's settings or the gear that he used, that's going to be listed at the bottom of every single photo, so you can take a look at that for yourself. Okay, cool.
And
So
I will say, once I got
yeah,
that lens in my hands, it changed my life. Like I almost like I used to shoot like predominantly with a wide angle naturally as like a landscape photographer, but you just start to see the world a little differently when you have a telephoto. You
absolutely.
naturally just look for like more compression and more the ability of like pulling and getting that shallow depth of field in moments like this. So what like you used to go like, oh, I see a moment, let me get the telly on. But now it's like, I got to go back to wide, because oftentimes the telly moments come and go a lot quicker, where landscape moments, they don't change all too much if you're there to shoot like a mountain range. So I'd rather be like more prepared for those crazy fast moments than not. So
Yeah, totally. I'm going to switch gears on you, but I think this is a really great. I love the general questions that are coming in, but I love the camera specific ones for that individual shot. So you and I are both married. We're both photographers. I don't know about you, but the patience to wait for the spouse to take the photo was mentioned in my vows. I'm very lucky, but this person is wondering, is there ever friction when you guys are stopping to shoot here and there? I know you guys are shooting professionally, but that can be a little tough. I know for me, if there's a shot that I'm like really after or really picturing, maybe it's a location or a time of day that's not convenient, as long as I communicate it well in advance, we're good.
yeah.
People don't like surprises, especially when it's a 4 a.m. surprise. Do you have any kind of tips for people that are, maybe with a spouse or friends and family, and they don't want to be that guy with the photo? Like, how do you get over that hump that can be a little tough?
Ooh. How do you get over that hump? Well, I'm very lucky because Megan shoots, and she very much prioritizes those incredible moments just as much, if not more. And she's also an incredible shooter. I would even say her Puma shots are better than mine in this moment. So she was also on the same lens. So
Yeah, she's a pretty
yeah.
great photographer too.
Yeah, she is. She's pretty incredible. So it saves me a lot of friction, if you want to use that word.
Right.
But you're exhausted when you travel. So I like to be transparent and open. For sure, we get on each other's backs, but not from a photography standpoint, just from sheer exhaustion. So when you're traveling with your spouse, I feel like this is more marital advice than it is photography advice, but just learn to work together, and sometimes you're going to have more time, sometimes you're not. And same goes for your spouse, right? Like, support hobbies and support your passions. And, if whatever end you're on, all I can say is, if you walk away with an incredible photo and she gave you 10 seconds to get it, and you go back home before your next trip and you show her that and be like, don't you want more beautiful moments like that for Instagram? Like kind of like like, I don't do this with Megan because I don't have to, but travel with a lot of friends that are couples and friends that in general want photos. And it's always a time at times suck when you're trying to get the perfect photo, right? It can take a while sometimes. So just yeah, encouraging, just be positive and upbeat, and there's a reason why you want the perfect photo, and most people understand that, I'd think, but if not,
Yeah.
just get better at your craft, and hopefully they love the photos that you're showing them,
Yeah.
and then it will just kind of allow it.
You made me think of something, and then we'll move on to the next photo. I used to have this conversation with people when I was doing travel consulting for photography trips. There comes a time in every trip where you, as the photographer, you need to ask the question, okay, is this a photo trip or is this a trip I'm taking photos on?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Once you come to peace with that, you're going to recognize, okay, the memories that we walk away from this trip, am I overshadowing that, or is it going to complement the entire experience, right? Because you look back at this with fondness, but if you don't communicate with the people that you're with, if you don't plan correctly, and you have some frustrations or something changes, you're going to look at the photo and be like, oh yeah, that's the time that we had a little bit of a tiff because I got a flat, and then we were racing the light and I left them to deal with it or what have you. So being present comes in many types, but it's funny how travel photography becomes like life advice.
Yeah, I mean, it is also super important to be present in the moment. It's not all about photography. Like, don't get me wrong, it is for me, but a lot of the times Megan will be like, all right, like, let's go rest at the hotel, and I'm like, but there's like 2 more stops I want to make. And then what happens at the hotel, like that exciting hanging out, the pool time, it actually makes me more rejuvenated to get back out there, and like a little bit, like I get my coffee finally. I didn't have it all morning, and then all of a sudden I'm awake, whatever it is, or I have the best breakfast of my life at this great hotel. So just you go with the flow when you travel. That's so important. You really have to.
Bingo. All right, so we're gonna move on. Okay, so we're switching gears a little bit. This one, we've got a couple shots throughout this presentation that are rather snowy. You used a long lens here for landscape. You mentioned compression. Can you tell the people in your own words why you like compression, what that does for you?
Yeah, I mean, first trip in Antarctica was earlier this year in February. I'm lucky to go back in October, which is crazy to say. So
yeah,
pretty excited to be working with the ship again. This was on the top deck while at sea. Sunset's going down. It is getting freezing. I'm one of 2 people up there. And when I went up there, you're kind of in the middle of this big bay. There's not a lot of subject close. It's all in the distance. And
right.
you're just watching these magnificent scaled huge white mountains get this like glow, obviously, as you can see. And I didn't even bring another lens up. I just knew when I was in my room and I looked out, it was like everything's going to be pretty far away. We're going to be moving pretty fast. The sun's going to be going away pretty fast as well. So it's not a huge window. And it's just, yeah, this was one of my favorite images I've ever taken. I told that to Ben when he's like, "What's the best photo you've ever taken?" I was like, "Dude, it's just you're going to this magical place that you have no idea what you're gonna expect, and you just don't know what you're gonna experience, from wildlife to landscapes, and there's just stuff in every direction." So when I saw just that orange like just that color come into a white landscape, and you can still see all the, like, I call them veins of the mountain, right? But like all the snowy caps of just how it's going down. I just feel like it made Antarctica more colorful. It's not that like white paradise. And this has happened, that some of the sunsets you get in Antarctica are crazy. Like it's just mind blowing to me that I
And that's
didn't
not what
only
you would
shoot
expect
sunsets.
either.
Yeah, you'd think like white, paradise or whatever, white continent, which it is very much all day. But then that little tiny window of time where you get the color, that's where I'm like most alive. It's just where I feel like you can never replicate these moments at sunset and sunrise. No
Totally.
sunset and sunrise is ever going to look the same. So it's like I'm going to be active the most at those times.
Absolutely. So that's a really good takeaway is, what times of day are you shooting? When the sun is at its highest in the sky, you're getting pretty flat shadows. Things aren't as interesting. Photography is all about light. Look for good quality light. If you can plan out your trips, your shots, so that you've got the time around sunrise and sunset to get those really interesting shots. I mean, it's the same thing with, you know, if you're doing content creation with video, golden hour is everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be shooting all day as long as you are comfortable at picking your windows and your opportunities. Your lens choice and the thought process, I think, was also really smart here. You know, we get the question of all the time, you know, whether it's landscapes or wildlife or street or urban or travel or city, sunset, any combination of situation. They say, well, what lens should I take? Or should I take primes or should I take zooms? The more comfortable you are with your equipment, you're going to know what you like about what lens, about what camera, and what that does for you. But your ability to say, you know what, it's moving really fast, I'm going to commit to this lens, I think that makes it a much more striking image, you know, because it wasn't a last minute decision of, oh my gosh, let me change.
Yeah. It was also our last sunset too. So I was prepared at that point to know like where my portfolio not lacked, but like I wanted some more compression in some images like that, and I was just hoping something like this would happen. So after 5 days, you know, you kind of start to make little judgment calls, understanding the landscape a little better too.
Totally. All right, so we're going to move on, and I think this is a great place to answer a question that somebody had. So do you ever use primes for travel photography, for, you know, visiting a city, sunset, evening light?
Yeah, quite often.
Course, right?
Yeah, it's my 17 millimeter, like 35 millimeter equivalent is such a monster.
It's my ride or die too.
Yeah, especially on like commercial work when there's like food photography, which I have to mix in for a lot of my clients, or just that, you know, a lot of people just say if I'm on a ship for a week, capture some details or some staff portraits. I'll like, you know, make it a point middle of the day when light's at its highest and I know I'm not going to be shooting landscapes outside, to just walk around the space, the ship, the hotel, wherever we are, and just see if I can get some lower depth of field moments, which
Definitely.
I love. It's also a great practice when you're not shooting landscapes, is to like, you know, really challenge yourself to do new things. Like, quote unquote, I call myself a landscape photographer, but the reason why I'm a travel photographer by trade is not because I can just shoot landscapes. It's because I'll shoot everything. So primes are really important for that, having it in your bag. You know, I think maybe when I'm like out and about, it's not my first choice, just because I like having a little bit of range, you know, just that versatility, because you don't know what you're going to expect. Like this photo, it's from a moving vehicle, like going 40 miles per hour down a mountainside. Most people
I
didn't
know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. You can walk to this space, like this spot, but it's like a thin road and you probably don't want to. And we were like, you know, the tender, they call it, the little boat that goes back to the ship you're on and off, was 20 minutes from departing. So we're like pushing our last minutes, and we had another viewpoint that was like further up the mountain that we also shot, but you know, it didn't have homes at this level. So as we're driving down, I was just like, I need to try to get a shot of this. I know it's coming because I saw it on the way up to this spot. So I like opened the window. The driver he didn't speak English, so he didn't even know to slow down or anything. He's just getting us back to where we're going. And I just, again, put my camera out the window and I was like, here it comes. And you wait for like gaps in the foliage of like, you know, driving down this area. And it's like, bam, there it was. I got the exact shot I wanted.
Perfect.
Yeah. Which explains the high shutter, obviously.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're shooting at a 1600th of a second, which is extremely fast action, but that allows you to, you know, remove the blur. Back to lens choices, because that is so crucial, right? You know, that's the long-term investment, are the lenses that we choose. You know, people think landscape, they think travel. Ultra wide comes up a lot, and yet I notice a vein of lens choice here that I want to jump into a little bit. So you tend to favor that 12 to 40. That's essentially like your mid-range everyday zoom. I mean, for me personally, if I have to choose one lens for the day and I'm not concerned about high reach, the 12 to 40 is excellent. I mean, it's a 24 to 80 equivalent. It's right in the middle. You get nice compression. You can get a solid portrait. You can get a landscape. I love the fact that it's so compact, and I know you do too. Um, if you had to choose like one other lens that's a zoom, what would you go with?
Hmm. So actually having the ability to zoom. Oh, that's so hard because I mean,
Yeah,
like 7 to 14, like obviously is such a beast of a lens, and I use it for so
sure.
many landscapes. But again, I just like I'm always looking for compression now for some reason. Like that's why the 12 to 40 is great because it's like you're not getting deep compression, but when you're talking about wide landscapes, it's kind of like that middle ground.
Right.
Um, I feel like it probably doesn't end up in the finals of like when I have a chance to breathe a perfect photo that I want to share like this, but my 40 to 150 is also a heavy favorite for sure. It's like right in the
Totally.
middle of this and
Yeah.
the 150 to 400. It's a great lens for compression. It's a great lens for wildlife, especially in Antarctica. I use that even many times for wildlife because sometimes you're getting too close. You're like right on an animal. So like that 150 to 400, like I can get the ice that's frozen on a leopard, like on a leopard seal, but with the 150 to 400, I can do that. But the 40 to 150, I can actually pull back a little bit and get a little bit more landscape around it and kind of fills a landscape feeling as well.
Absolutely. We do have a comment. I just want to shout out and say, heck yes, that 50 to 200, that world first that we came out with last year, it's 100 to 400 full frame equivalent at f2.8 is a fantastic travel lens. It's got a closer focus distance than anything else in its class, to my knowledge. Extremely lightweight. It's another one that people will pick up and usually cuss and say, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea how light it was." But it gives a really unique versatility, especially when you put a teleconverter on it. You can get up to 1-to-1 macro. So just shouting that out. So we do have somebody, I've got two questions that I can answer really quick. So the first is, how do you mitigate shooting and noise when you're at a 1600th of a shutter? Well, let's take a look at the settings that Chris has this at. And I'm sorry that you can't see my mouse, but you've got 1600th of a second, which is fast, right? At f4, which is bright. It's not the brightest like f2.8 or something like that, but it gives you just a little bit of a safety net with nailing your focus and depth of field. But look at your ISO. The lower that number is, the less sensitive the camera is to light. That tells us, and if you look at the photo, it's kind of obvious. That tells us that the conditions were extremely bright here. Yes, that 1600th of a second, Chris was trying to freeze that action since he was in a car and looking to get that perfect, decisive moment. And that's how he froze action, but that doesn't let in light. But when we look at our settings and the fact that the ISO is literally as low as our cameras can go, that tells us that we had tons of light. So no noise, because noise is introduced when the sensitivity of the camera has to boost detail. And if you don't have natural light to do that, noise becomes a thing, which is super easy with programs like Lightroom or DxO Mobile. And it gets better and better with every single camera that comes out.
Yeah,
But
and
no,
it's
your
all I would even add in there too, like places like this and a lot of places you travel, you get some crazy shadows at this time of day as like that sun's still bright but getting lower. You'll get a lot of like mountain regions that are casting these like pretty crazy shadows in areas that unless you are stopped on a tripod and like really trying to favor a shot to be perfectly composed and perfectly balanced across that f-stop, getting to an f10, sometimes you just can't avoid it. And you have, like, if you're shooting like me from a moving car, you have to rely on some gradients in the aftermath of editing. You gotta just kind of know that it's not going to be perfect in that moment. And my imagery is not about perfection, it's about the moment. Like, it's always about the moment for me.
Absolutely. I've seen a lot of perfect images that make me feel nothing, right? And a lot of that has to do with the quality of light and how we approach our subject. Another question I do want to touch into a little bit is, somebody asked, can you explain compression? So compression is what happens when you're shooting a subject with a longer lens, usually something with a zoom, or I would argue compression becomes obvious over 50 millimeter full frame equivalent. compression becomes more dramatic, and I'm still going to explain it, but compression becomes more dramatic with the higher the focal length that we use. So what is compression? What it means to our eye is you're going to lose your sense of distance from your view as the viewer, as the photographer, from the subject in the photo, and those subjects from each other. You know, I know that that mountain is really far away. How far away is that mountain that's in front of it, though? Could be miles. We're not really sure. And then also, how far wide is that bay? How far is that orange building right at the front corner from those boats in the bay? We don't know, because compression has given us a different perspective. And it's a great way to give storytelling. You know, if you shot this ultra wide and everything looked really far away from each other because compression wasn't a thing, you would say, okay, Chris is in this place. But because you've introduced compression, you've introduced relationship. And so much of travel photos is storytelling. Now we know that, you know, it feels like there's a relationship between the ecosystem, this bay, and that surrounding community. That's what compression is doing for us here.
Yeah, and I would just add in too, just scale is like compression in my mind as well. Like,
yeah,
with your eye at closest to like a 35 millimeter, most people say, right? That's like your eyesight. When you're at an 80 millimeter, that mountain, as Ben said, is going to be a lot closer to you in that image, which just provides this, like, it feels like it's hovering over the village. So the compression, you can bring it, kind of brings in dimensionally all ways of living there. Like, I would say it's like that's what's out your window, but if it was far and I shot it with a 35, it's not going to feel like that mountain really played a role. But when you wake up there, you're traveling there, that mountain is pulling you, that like the pitons are like your eyes gravitate there. So in imagery, I want my photos to gravitate there as well, because that's what you're going to remember when you travel to this, I think it's Soufrière. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, if anyone's from St. Lucia, but if you travel there and you look at it, that's what you're going to remember. I'm telling you right now, like that piton is where you're going to spend your time on boats in the mountains looking down. It's just, it is what captivates you. So compression allows you to kind of captivate, in my mind.
Absolutely. Yep. Captivate. That's a perfect way to do that. Okay. Just to address one last thing. So we're talking about lens choices. We're talking about compression. We get the question all the time. Okay. Within OM system, if there's one lens I'm going to take for travel, what's it going to be? We've talked about the 12 to 40 a lot. It's a fantastic lens, but say the budget doesn't allow for that, or you just want one lens for the trip and you want more range. Well, I've got the answer. That's our 12 to 100 f4 Pro. Extremely sharp. It's our best line of lens. But that versatility, it's a 24 to 200 at f4. If there's one lens for travel, I would argue that that is the one, right? So just to answer that as people keep discussing in the comments. So now we're getting away from compression in a way. You've gone ultra wide. We're about the same height. I don't think you jumped for this. Were you in a helicopter, Chris?
Was in a helicopter.
Yeah. Very cool. So what's it like shooting in a helicopter? Like what do you have to be cognizant of that's different from shooting on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky enough to work with this helicopter company a lot of times, which is one of the first I ever worked with. Mauna Loa Helicopter, shout out, because they're awesome and they always take care of us. But what I learned early on, I think, has nothing to do with photography and more about like you leaving with the imagery that you want. So if you are at, and this goes for a lot of things, safari, it goes for, tour guides that are meant to take you out on a workshop, because I host workshops, so I know this very frequently. People don't really ask for support. They expect the person that's guiding them to provide all the support. And it goes two ways, right? Like the pilot in a helicopter has a job to do. He has to get you from one side of this coastline to the other within a certain amount of time while there's other helicopters flying around. So if you need time or angles, or you are not quite, in the placement you need to be, you have to be communicating with the people there guiding you. So it's not really photography knowledge, but it is in every single capacity. if you communicate with the people from the moment you're getting on that helicopter to the moment you're getting off, and you're like, hey, this is what I'm trying to leave with. And for me, I've photographed Nepali coast from every angle you could imagine on these flights because I've done so many, but I hadn't really shot from this valley specifically. So before we got on the flight, I was like, hey, this is an area that I want to spend a little extra time. So it's okay if we breeze past, some of these other iconic spots because I've gotten some moments that I love there. Also, you can kind of see it, but the main spirals that people photograph, if you know Nepal, you'll know what I'm talking about. But there's a pretty big shadow you can see right in the middle of that, behind that wall of spirals. That's where people spend time. It was really dark. The shadows were kind of consuming it, and I just didn't like the details. So when we were over it, I was like, hey, I love it, obviously, but we don't need to spend as much time here. You see that bright green landscape over there? That's where we need to go kind of circle around. So
Totally.
being able to communicate that, obviously the wide allows me to shoot the whole coastline from what's below because I'm hanging out of a helicopter. So I'm kind of getting like under where your feet would be perched. Yeah, I mean, this if you're ever going to do a helicopter flight anywhere, Nepali is like crazy. Even what you see before you get here, highly recommend it. It's a really fun place for photographers in the sky.
Right. So we might not all get to hop in a helicopter on our next vacation, but Chris has done something really just consistently throughout his images, but I want to call it out here because it does help make the images outside of giving such striking detail with those shadows. And that's not putting your horizon in the center of the image. He's chosen to showcase the land a little bit more than the sky. So that's a good thing. I do see some side chat going on about the difference between the 12 to 100 versus the 12 to 200. So the 12 to 200 is weather sealed. Yes, it absolutely is. It is not as bright. It's not a fixed f4 like our 12 to 100. So that's the difference. If you want as much versatility as possible, get the 12 to 200. If you want as much versatility while still getting our sharpest and brightest, get the 12 to 100. So I hope that puts a pin in that part of the discussion. But let's move along because we've still got quite a few images to go through. So we're back to wildlife, and complementary color and warm light really seems to be a part of your style. You've got those oranges and greens here. For those of you that aren't sure what is complementary color, a great example of that is look at any of your major sports teams, either in Europe or in the States. A lot of your sports teams use complementary colors. They're opposites on the color wheel and they balance really well. So the example here is that orange and the green, and then you got the yellow in between. But back to your subject, what's cool about this photo is you have 3, because 2 is not quite as interesting as 3. We see this a lot. So that's a little subject, either people or wildlife tip for you. Get 3 or just do 1 really, really well. So where were you for this? Because I feel like it's not exactly around the corner for me. Where is this?
It's another shot from the Faroe Islands, which
Yep.
at the right season, it is like a haven for puffin. So you can see quite a bit from mainland. But this was my first visit to Mykonos, which is a small island that's like off the main areas. It's like pretty close to the airport. It's a wildlife sanctuary for puffin and a couple other bird species that are pretty common. But we just happened to be their peak season for them. So obviously there is puffin everywhere. They're flying and landing and taking off. And, in my experience, like you can see quite a bit wherever you are there. But oftentimes you don't find them together. Like they are,
Right.
but it's hard when you're on these cliff sides because you don't have a lot of room to change your angles. So you see a couple, but it's, you have to be quite lucky because they move fast. And the one that you see like in the background was like in and out of its den a lot. So, it was a very quick moment, kind of happened a few times in and out of them, being mindful of you there. But I've just spent so much time photographing single puffins and like getting really close to the beak and the beauty of those colors and the eyes and, raindrops falling on them that when we went there, I was like, man, I need a group shot. Like that was like kind of my goal heading there.
Mm-hmm.
So when I kind of found that depth that I was looking for, that style, I was just hoping that these puffin would cooperate. And they absolutely did. I got pretty lucky with it. Again, back to that 150 to 400, I think, right? That's what I was on, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. So it's just it's special hanging out with them. It's chaos too. So you're not you're looking in every direction, hoping for a moment, but it happens really fast. So
Why do I feel like, I think of any location that you've got a high population of birds specifically, why do I feel like the smell not getting translated by the photo is something we should all be grateful for.
yeah, I don't remember the smell too much, to be
Oh, that's
honest. Like
great. Okay.
I don't know if it's just puffing or what, but maybe I don't know. I was laying in grass as well, so I was kind of like down to their eye level. I probably should have smelled it, but maybe I was just focused on the camera.
Totally. Totally. Okay. And I'm looking at the questions. So somebody mentioned, your colors, of course, are absolutely gorgeous. Um, Obviously editing is pretty much always a part of the creative process, but you've mentioned previously that your editing style is pretty minimalist for the most part. You've got a preset that you've built for yourself that you know works for your style. But I've seen a lot of your images. I never feel like you're manipulating reality or giving a quality to the colors that looks oversaturated. Do you have anything to speak on that beyond?
I mean, I love backlight. Like I just love when the light is behind a subject. It is kind of like an art in and of itself because when it's low, you're going to be dealing with a lot of shadows in photos.
Mhm.
So knowing that, you kind of have to be able to maintain some of that depth with settings, right? Like shooting at the right f-stop,
Totally.
and being able to edit some of those shadows back to where a naked eye or your camera is just not quite picking up because you don't want to blow out some of the really bright spots.
Yep.
So
Shooting raw,
learning,
people.
yeah, learning how to balance, right? Shooting raw, absolutely. Um, yeah, I mean, outside of that, I mean, these colors specifically, I mean, it's pretty true to form. My specific coloring does emphasize greens, yellows, and sometimes oranges, depending on the photo. So there could be a slight tick up in it from an editing standpoint, but when you're looking at it this time of day, which is like closer to sunset, that
Things are
golden
going to
light
glow like that.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, like it is naturally going to be glowing those colors. So, it's more of a preference at that point, like what your preset and what you're shooting raw is going to be slightly changing, but I wouldn't say I'm like making their orange feet way oranger or the grass way greener.
Yep.
It's very minimal, I think, in context. So
Absolutely. A little bit of seasoning goes a long way, right?
yeah, for sure.
Okay. We'll keep moving. So again, something completely different. Absolutely iconic shot. This is Legoland right now. I've seen this photo many times. This is also showcased in your Global Pro gallery for your travel images with us. I mean, you've been an ambassador with us for a bit at this point, and I've been lucky enough to look at your images. This one always comes up. And I think what actually does it for me, you've got the leading lines of the path. You've got that striking, red going on against just a really clean pastel sky. I think the birds flying through the frame actually kind of make it for me. Maybe I'm just focusing a little too hard, but I mean, I love this shot, man.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's luck, right? You don't
Yeah.
always plan for a bird to fly through, but you get lucky and one comes through. And I just like, for me, we spent two sunrises at the actual Taj Mahal, like where you go in and you're up close and personal, and it's incredible. And you are like battling the crowds, and it's just chaos.
Yeah.
You step away from it, and you find these like kind of further away moments from the gardens that are just adjacent across the river.
Yeah.
It's just so much more quiet and so much more like me, right? Like I don't mind city, I don't mind urban, I don't mind busyness, but like truest form Chris imagery wise is like finding a piece of quiet that provides a balance between, in this case, nature and urban architecture, right? Like you're shooting a man-made structure, so to really be able to captivate that from a landscape, adventure, travel, nature moment, I always try to integrate it, and I feel like the bird just kind of balances that, right? It's like still things are moving, but it's not people. It's
Yep.
like when you get out of the chaos of what that place brings, this is happening around it, and I just don't think that's
Yeah.
captured enough.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, this building doesn't exist in a vacuum. And I think we've all seen the same kind of quintessential shot. And to your point about going off the beaten path, I think that's really important, especially for those of you that are trying to photograph iconic structures, landscapes, what have you. We've all seen pretty much the same shot, more or less. It's all lined up exactly the same way. Challenge yourself to go to a different angle. You might get the benefit of lower crowds, but you're going to have a completely unique photo that is probably going to wind up being a lot more interesting. And if you're somebody that is trying to build a portfolio, this is a great example of that lesson, which is get off the beaten path.
Yeah.
Even when it's a standard, image like this that we can all picture, you've broken that mold.
For sure.
And it's a lot more striking as a result.
Yeah, I mean, I shot the Taj from our hotel room, from our hotel, upper deck stairs, like the rooftop, shot it from the garden, shot it from inside. And I mean, I'm not kidding. I probably left with like hundreds of different images from different perspectives. Right. And I debated between this one and like, there's one where I'm like in probably a place most people don't travel. It's like in the neighborhoods, like think like Slumdog Millionaire kind of status, right? Like you're in deep in these neighborhoods where you don't want to be walking with a lot of gear anyways. So I just took a camera in, like low key profile, and I got a shot of all the, kind of homes around it. And like, that was a stark reality for me to see and experience. And I love it almost just as much, but obviously for this travel nature, that this image is always a favorite for me. So you'll leave with more than one. It's not just like I got one photo and this is my favorite. You'll leave with a lot of stuff, and you can kind of look back and remember all the different ways you experience places.
Totally. So I do have one general question about travel that somebody brought up, which I think is great, which is, what are 3 things you do when you plan your travel trips so that you're going to have a good time?
Good question. I bring all my gear from a photography standpoint. I don't really like to leave much behind. If I can fit it, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I like to be prepared for it. It's always on me too. I'm not really a Pelican case underneath the like airplane kind of guy. I'd rather have it on me. I get prepared for conversations when I'm on a plane with a lot of gear, that if someone's like, your bag's too heavy or you got to put this under the plane, I'll say,
find
no,
somebody else,
homie. I was like, trust me, if you want to deal with a $50,000, problem, that if you guys mess this up in any shape or form, just because you can't let me put it where it's going to fit in the airplane, and I just kind of make it known like this is more important to have with me than not. Also, fun tip is your batteries. That's a key. You could just say you can't take this stuff out of your bag, right? Like that's a travel tip. I think that goes without saying if you're trying to bring a lot of gear. Also, I guess like I use a 40-liter backpack, so it's heavy, but it allows me to bring quite a bit. From my laptop and hard drives and photography gear. Prep, but only so much is a tip. I'd say, like, prep your locations, how to map it out, what makes the most sense from a time commitment. You don't want to be doing that when you're like on the ground trying to capture images. You don't want to like, oh, this is 40 minutes away, like kind of already predispose yourself to what it's going to take to get from place to place if you're trying to do a lot in a day. But also don't do all of it, because the best moments are the ones you don't plan for a lot of the time. So,
amen.
Just be prepared enough, but not fully. Third, what would be my third? That's a tough one. Keep things charged. Don't take a day off. Like, just if you have a hotel room and you have, a way to do things, like keep everything plugged in every chance you can. Even if you're tired, plug it in before you go to bed, because you don't know what's going to happen. You could, like, I've had hotels that lose power and you're like, yeah, you got a room to stay, but you can't charge anything. And you're going 2-3 days without the ability to charge. So it's better to just have things charged every available chance when you're traveling. That would be a big one for me. Just little travel tips.
Solid. Okay. So we've had this question a couple different times in a couple different ways. So, you said pack all your gear. So your current lineup, you've got OM1 Mark II. I know you shoot with the OM3 on occasion as well. I know that's definitely something that you're looking to have into the kit. I know I like it. It's definitely a little bit slimmer, but lens wise, so you've got the 12-40, 150-400, 7-14. You love your 17, Is that the 1.2 or the 1.8, by the way?
1.2.
Very nice. Okay. 1.8 is fantastic for those of you that are wondering the differences. 1.2 is definitely just going to be a little bit brighter, of course. The lower that f-stop, the brighter it is. But it is definitely bigger. I mean, there's like, I would say double the size difference. So, you know, take that into consideration with your choices of what fits in your life. What other lenses am I? Oh, you're 40 to 150, right?
Yep. And that was it. That's mostly it. I used to take a couple others, but that's mostly it. I haven't taken it for a while. It's the 12 to 25. Is that what it is? 8 to 25. 8 to 25.
Oh,
Yeah, I used to bring that around. I do
I
love
love
it.
that lens.
Yeah, I love that lens. It's a great lens, but I've just kind of narrowed down. I think the 12 to 40 and the 7 to 14 are kind of like they've just always been my right hands, you know. I just love them.
Totally. Do you rock a polarizing filter at all?
Not really. Not
Really? No
much. Yeah,
kidding. Okay.
not much. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, that's good to know. I mean, you know, because that's usually a lot of people will recommend that as a great tool, since, you know, glare is one of those things we can't correct in post, right? But it gives us richer greens, and if you're shooting any kind of reflective surface, whether that's glass, metal, shiny skin, waxy plant surfaces, it benefits all. But if it's not your style and it's not something, you know, you don't want to mess with, you don't have to.
Yeah.
I do want to shout out that Age of 25. If you guys don't know about it, do not sleep on that lens. Definitely check it out. It's an ultra wide, but it's a 16 to 50 f4 full frame equivalent. So you're getting the ultra wide, but then you're getting almost into like street, which is dope. And then you can whip around and do architecture. What's special about it, besides the focal length, though, and I'm sure you've encountered this yourself, its ability to close focus is almost pseudo macro. So we talk about compression again. You can photograph, you know, say you've got a really iconic piece of food in the location that you're in. You can photograph that super up close. You'll get the entire building behind it. So it makes for a very unique storytelling piece. And it's one advantage, I would say, over its big brother, the 7 to 14, is you can actually put filters on the front. So if you want to run a protection filter, if you want to do a polarizer, you absolutely can. You're not going to have that option with the 7 to 14. 7 to 14, though, you're going to get a little bit wider and you're going to get brighter. So those are making pieces.
And it's a great lens if you're like not sure and you get one lens, like on a helicopter, for example. You can have one camera body and you're like, do I go wide or do I go tele, you know? So it's like a kind of a good mid-range balance for those.
Yeah, commitment becomes a totally different thing when you're a couple thousand feet up in the air.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And you got to decide before.
Totally. All right. So I'm going to move on. So this is dramatic and for a totally different type of quality of light. And here's your 40 to 150 finally being showcased in this lineup. Honestly, I just want to hear what you have to say about this. Where were you? What's going on?
Yeah.
Why did you choose this?
Man, I know we're running out of time too, but I could talk about this for like an hour.
That's okay.
I got asked to do a project with PepsiCo, and it was to the Amazon rainforest pretty much, and it was in multiple cities around it. This specific city at the time, I don't know where it ranks now, but it was considered the 7th most dangerous city in the world, Acre, Brazil. And basically this project was a 3-week affair of emotions. Like I can't even explain. You hear all this stuff about the Amazon's on fire, and you know, like now I think I'm at the point with professional photography where I need to mix in more projects like this, where I'm bringing more awareness to the world and the things that are happening. And long story short is PepsiCo was they were supporting deforestation versus reforestation. So a lot of the Amazon's getting burned down. A lot's happening there. It's really sad, and you kind of overlook it, but to experience it firsthand is it hits your mind in a different way, because right after this image, we were waiting to catch like a boat to go across the river, and you're sitting there, and I kid you not, like if you've ever looked at the sky when it starts to rain and you get those fat raindrops that are like hitting you, and you're just like, what? Like it's, you know, it's raining so hard. It was like that, but with ash. And you don't realize how much land is being burned.
Yeah.
So this specific project, the one thing I was tasked with was a contrast between what was and what is becoming.
Mm,
Um, and when you look at this, like it's not, it's not the most epic photo, it's not the most like beautiful photo, it's not even sunset. It's the middle of the day,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
this fire was so dramatic, and you see a fire that's already destroyed a tree and a tree that still stands on someone's property. We were driving around to chase wildfire, so to speak, and I had a bodyguard with me because if someone sees you capturing this in that neck of the woods, you wouldn't come back, basically. Like
Right.
it can be pretty damaging, for many different reasons, but it's all because people are selling their land,
Yeah.
to plant soybean fields or whatever you have it.
Yeah.
And there is like so much beauty and depth to the Amazon that people don't realize, that the types of trees and the types of plants and the things that are actually made from a lot of it doesn't get enough attention of how valuable it actually is and can be to the world. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's just more of like an honest truth. It's not so much like the beautiful side of travel. It was a really cool project because after this, I got to go spend a week on like a little local boat and experience like the natural riverways of the Rio Negro, and I got to go into like untouched Amazon parts, into like these um, like research centers, and I was like one of the only photographers that got to visit some of those places. It's usually just like researchers and scientists who are studying, those things and the animals and all the stuff that comes from it. But sure enough, like this for me, it was like a transformative image. It wasn't like look at this beautiful place. It was more of like it was to raise money for reforestation and educating people in Brazil, in the Amazon specifically, on why protecting these types of areas are so important. So,
I mean, you touched on all the points. Telling a story is not always the story that is a happy one, but it's an important one. I mean, I don't need to tell you that you have a fantastic talent. You travel the world constantly, and you put out great images. But to your point, you want to be doing more of this because you have a platform, you have those connections, you have the skill. We love this natural world, and we're all part of it. So the fact that you can share that is a gift, really. Um, and I don't want to take away from it by talking about this in an artistic way. One person, though, did have a question I do want to address, I think is good, just for executing this type of image. So they asked, you're shooting at a 4,000th of a second, ISO 640, 5.6. What was the reasoning for those settings? Because that's almost like fast action.
yeah. Well, again, the sequence right before this was this beautiful road with Amazon trees around it that was not burning. There was
There you go.
motorcycles like hauling by with dust kicking up. And granted, we visited a creek not just for this photo. We visited for like many different things. It's kind of like what I explained earlier, where sometimes you have a split second and you're dealing with settings that already kind of were on your camera pre-existing. You're just like, stop the car. That's the frame right there that
Yep.
we've been
Yep.
talking about for 2 weeks. And I was pre-prepared by this bodyguard that it's like, hey, if we're gonna stop and do this, you have like 7 seconds. Like, and it's not so much like 7 seconds out to frame. It's like 7 seconds from the moment the car is within the region of what's happening, because people burning are like out and about. They're like looking for people interfering, trying to put it out with water or capture, whatever it is. So for me, it was also just being scared out of my mind because I don't shoot a lot of like reclamation projects like this where you're trying to bring like a deep story that's so much deeper than travel. Like there's so much more to this than what I could sit here and talk about as beautiful, right?
Right.
It's like it's like a split. It's like literally just instinctual. I just needed things to look away. Like I literally just needed to get fire and that contrast. And I was like, I think it was one of two photos I got to take. So I wish I
Well
could
done.
have finitely changed the settings, but it was just what it was at that moment.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I hope that answered that question. I want to move on from that because I know we are a little bit over time. So we've got two images, again, totally different from each other. You were telling me about this before we went live. So what's special about this to you? Because I want the people to know.
Yeah, so switching gears, definitely.
Yeah.
I think, we were in Greenland for 3 weeks on a ship, and you see a lot of ice everywhere.
Sure.
It's really hard to give depth to ice.
Hmm.
Obviously, like there's all these colors and contours and shapes of ice breaking off, and you see these like rigid cuts, and that alone is beautiful. But blue and white is what you're dealing with, like blue skies, blue water, blue ice, white, depending on how the light's hitting it. And it's very hard to
It's
provide
tough.
scale. Yeah,
Yeah.
very difficult to provide scale. Again, going back to compression. So for like a lot of the moments I had ice, I was looking for things, subjects, ways of framing it that really shows the magnitude of this. So like one instance that's not this photo was a little tiny fox, an Arctic fox running across an ice field, and you get this wide shot
Wow.
and you see like thousands of pieces of ice, but you see this little fox running across, and he ran all the way up to us. So you get these like portraits up close, and like that has more story to it. But this photo specifically, some people would think this is like, you know, like the end of a glacier mouth, right? Like this is land. This is an iceberg floating at sea. And you see these massive icebergs, not just these like little cubes that are there. It's like they are huge. And this boat, this local boat, I think it was a fishing vessel, was also ginormous. So, it's not that big, but it's big enough to provide scale of how big this ice, sheet break off actually was. And I love finding moments like that where you can kind of integrate, something to give you a human element, something that you've maybe shared a memory with, like being on a boat, or you see boats on a harbor if you're like walking around a beach area. It just really helps, I think, the human brain comprehend a place they've never been, because that's what Greenland was. It was just a lot of ice. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is again, that strong takeaway of using the different lenses at our disposal to create relationship, to tell a bigger story, because that's the difference sometimes between a landscape photo and a travel photo, right? There's that human element and a sense of perspective besides just, giving love to the scene itself. And it's also just serendipitous. I mean, it's not like you were able to plan that boat being there, but you saw the moment, right?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Okay, so last photo, and such like a, quality of light, complementary colors, just a striking landscape again. And then I see a human element that I guess I would want to call that a village there, but that waterfall just I feel like I'm looking at something that is not of planet Earth, and I got to believe that was part of the intention. So well done. Where are we for this, and how did you approach this shot?
Another Faroe Islands moment.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, I would say it's one of the most photographed locations there, because once you
Yeah.
land at the airport, you're about 7 or 13 minutes driving. So it's usually the first place I go.
Yeah.
Most flights arrive late, so you could literally go catch your first sunset there.
It's a good tip.
Yeah, it's a beautiful spot. The village is Gassadalur and the waterfall is Mulefasser. I've seen it. I've seen this place 30 times in my life because I've taken so many trips to the Faroes. I've seen it with sunsets and sunrises, and I've seen it with low clouds. I've seen it in where the waterfall is actually flowing backwards because the wind is so strong. It's like picking it up off the ocean and it's pushing it like up, and you literally see it like backward flowing. There's so many ways to capture it. And I think for me, it was just not only just a beautiful moment, but one of my favorite seeing it because I just feel like the sunset had a lot of like depth to it. So I just love being able to see that. It's a great place to see puffins. So if you do make it there and you're in the right season, you can see puffins here at times. For me, I always try to find different ways to shoot it. I just saw a question pop up about using a filter for the sunset photo. I don't use that many filters, so it's all natural out of camera. I love natural
What?
light, letting the camera do most of the work. Obviously, Sometimes you deal with little things that are not like true to form professionalism, like the sun being a little bit too highly exposed. But for me, that's where the sun was. That's what the sun looks like when you're looking at it with your eye. So it's not about like perfecting those little things with a filter. It's
Yep.
just about being present in a moment, in a place you love, and just being able to experience it. I think that's really what travel is all about.
That's a perfect way to put a bow on this. I mean, for those of you that have stayed through the entire presentation, or for those of you that are going to be watching this later, I think it's awesome to have you joining us, Chris, and to give your perspective. But your message is so clear and maybe a little surprising for people, which is the moment and the feeling is vastly more important than the perfection of the photo, right? We don't want to get lost in the sauce, because you could be sitting there wondering about your f-stop and, oh, do I have a filter for this? And, is my, the stabilization of my lens going to, there's a million thoughts that can be going through it, but approaching a situation saying, what do I want to feel? What do I want others to feel? That's so iconic within your work. And I think that's so important for people looking to take better travel photos, is that human experience of what am I feeling when I look at this image, right?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess my like closing remark too would be, I get asked like, what's your number one advice for photographers? And everyone's always expecting like a camera tool, like advice, like of some
Nope.
sort. But mine is just spend time in the places you want to be traveling. Like if you don't take the trip, you don't go make the trek on the airplane or the boat or whatever it's going to do to get you in position to go see a place you've never been, you're not going to get photos. You're not going to get better in your craft. You're not going to learn how to do something differently in editing if you don't have different moments that you're exposed to. So go expose yourself. Go be in the moment. Feel it. Like, don't just take photos the whole time. Like, actually take a moment to stop and enjoy it. Be present. Share it with people if you can. I love solo traveling. I get so much out of it. But being married, knowing the difference of the two, I just love doing it with people. It really brings so much joy in the moments that like photography is not in the essence of your profession, right? Like when you're going to dinner and there's not anything to take a photo of, whatever it is, if you could bring friends, family, your mom, your dad, whoever it is along, travel brings so much to the soul. And if you can't do it, I hope my images, I hope OM Systems images and the people that represent the cameras bring it to you. Get out there, do what you love, travel.
And don't forget to print, people. Seriously. That's always my big thing, is get outside and print. But yeah, well, Chris, thank you so much. For those of you online, if you're not following us on YouTube, make sure you give us that like and subscribe. We're going to be doing shows all the time, and there are different events and discussions in various languages. You can take a look at our profile to navigate all through that. And we're going to be doing more of these kinds of fireside chats as the months go on. But this wraps up our summer school session. So again, thank you, Chris. You did a fantastic job. I really appreciate you giving that insight. For those of you that you want to check out more of Chris's work, keep in touch with him. Maybe shoot him a DM with a question. His Instagram is in the bio, but it's Chris Romes. So definitely check him out there. And for all of you, thank you so much. Keep shooting, print your images, stay in the moment, and have a great night.
Thanks for the support, everyone.
Cheers. All right, let's roll that outro.